We talked yesterday and today when we get to the point with people with the getting the acetate, getting the definitive meridian, and then using the eye positions to try and find out what the definitive meridian was caused by, the imbalance was due to. And we look at different eye positions, ATP, toxicity, etc. And then we come to that position in the left and up. And that position tends to indicate there's a nutritional deficiency, which could mean multitude of things. It could be a vitamin, a water-soluble vitamin, a fat-soluble vitamin, a mineral, amino acid, fatty acid, coenzymes, and so on. So that's when we use the composites. So a composite is a very good idea, but it's never going to be 100%. You can never base any one composite and say, oh, because some substances in composites can be antagonistic. So, for instance, we know that zinc and copper can be antagonistic. So if you've got a product that's got zinc and copper in, the body may respond to the thing it needs, but it could also respond to the thing it doesn't need. Okay? So never base something as 100%. They're good markers, and generally they're correct. But sometimes you think, well, that's funny because the person did show to a mineral, but they didn't show to the composite. And it could be that, as I say, there's too much copper in that person. They don't want to have any more copper. But generally speaking, the composites lead you in the right direction. So on the assumption we've got as far as nutrition, let's have a look at a few nutritional products, because these are things we've introduced over the last year and may be significant to understanding some of the conditions that we've covered. So we've talked about using the composites of the air, re-challenge the eye position, and if the weakness returns, then you may need another nutrient in addition. Okay, so let's have a look at a few. We talked before the break a little bit about macular degeneration. This is the fastest growing cause of blindness in the world. In older age, but unfortunately is not just in older age. There is an inherited form which affects people in their 20s and 30s, but there is also a growing number of people who are developing in their 50s and 60s rather than sort of 70s, 80s and 90s, which is very sad. It's more prevalent in the Western world than it is the Eastern world. Now, one of the things we talked about is these family of carotenoids, particularly on the red, orange, yellow end of the spectrum. And one of the reasons that we've changed our diet and these nutrients is the changing taste, apparently, of the consumer. So there's been some programs in the last 6 months or so on what life was like in Victorian England. I don't know whether you saw some of these very interesting programs about what life was like. And I was really surprised that the average calorie consumption of people in Victorian England was 5,000 calories a day. And it included certainly 5, 6, 7 fruit and vegetables a day. Okay? This is not the poor people in the East End of London, and it's not the same, the Welshwood Road, but the average person. And the average person worked manually from dawn till dusk virtually, and ate a lot. And they ate a lot of bacon and all sorts of things, and bread, as bread, really was. In about 1850, they brought in the mill, the bread, and began to refine it. And people said, "Oh, this is nice, white bread, is really is great." And wholemeal bread then sort of went out of fashion, and this came and became more popular. So by the turn of the century in 1900, there was an ever increasing of white bread. Now that meant that the bran was removed, and the germ. So all you were left with is endosperm, which is primarily going to be starch. So you didn't and then have the bran, which contained the vitamin Bs, which are necessary to metabolize the starch as fuel. And you didn't have the wheat germ oil, which was your antioxidant to protect yourself from free radicals. So that milling actually led to enormous amount of health issues. And then in the 20th century, cardiovascular disease just rocketed. And one of the reasons for that perhaps could be that we didn't get vitamin E in the diet anymore because we didn't have the wheat germ, and certainly the vitamin Bs, which we know are involved with homocysteine. So other things started to occur, and people started getting more fussy about the vegetables and the fruits. And so they started producing, by not genetic engineering, but by natural selection, sweeter things. People were eating more sugar by that time. Sugar was coming in. People developed a sweeter taste. They didn't want bitter things anymore. And so the bitter vegetables went out of fashion. And of course, one of the bitters normal ones is kale. And kale is wonderful because it's got all the K and the lutein and so on in it. And it went out. Hardly anybody had heard of kale after mid-1800s. It went out of fashion because it was bitter. And it's been found that these bitter compounds in the fruits and the vegetables which they used to eat were bitter to stop insects from attacking the plant. So the insects didn't like it either, so they didn't attack the plant. But those substances are called polyphenolics, and they are the things that have the antioxidant properties and the therapeutic properties in the fruit and veg. So now people have things which are less bitter. You know, sweet corn is called sweet corn because it's sweet. If you have proper corn, maize, which they feed to animals, it's not sweet. It's pretty tough. That's what we used to have. That's what maize used to be. Now we have to have sweet, and it does taste sweet, doesn't it? Because it's high in fructose and so on. Everything is sort of sweetened, if you like. So by changing, you've taken out a lot of the actual protective substances, and one of the most important ones is these lutein and zeaxanthin and carotenoids. Now they're beginning to restore them back. You're getting colourful carrots, aren't they? We had those the other day. The purple-coloured carrots, you know? You get those in Ireland. Yes. And they're nice, aren't they? And you get different coloured purple sprouting broccolis and so on. So the bitter the substance is actually the more therapeutic it is, the more protective. But people take those outer leaves off, don't they? On cabbage and things. The real value is in the green leaf of the cabbage, not the white, the inside. And heaven knows with lettuces if there's any value whatsoever in them, particularly icebergs. So we talked earlier about the carotenoids, the beta-carotene, which is the orangey substance. We talked about zeaxanthin, which is the orange. The mesozeaxanthin, which is the new wonder substance, which is protects the eyes better than anything else. Lutein, which is the yellow, and bilberry, which is the anthocyanidin. So all three macular pigments are required for optimal eye health. Beta-carotene is a direct precursor in most cases, where possible, to retinal, and thus to creating rhodopsin, the visual pigment. So vitamin A and beta-carotene are important for actually being able to see, to get the nerves to work. And these carotenoids form the background, in other words, the retina, they're in there, particularly the macula. So this is why we put this product together. And we will probably chop and change a little bit as new ideas come in. We might put a bit of astaxanthin in there. I'm yet to find astaxanthin muscle test for macular degeneration. Doctor friend of mine from Vladivostok, she has macular degeneration inherited, and she finds that this helps enormously. She finds that bilberry does very little for her, but the lutein zeaxanthin, she said it improves her acuity of the eye, so the quality of the vision that she has is better. She doesn't see anymore, but what she does see is clearer. So that's important. And that's what got me thinking, yeah, maybe we're jumping up the wrong tray by giving a multiple. Maybe we should be looking at individually and tailoring it much more, particularly with macular degeneration, to saying, right, let's test her actually with lutein and zeaxanthin and mesozeaxanthin and so on, and tailor it in rather than just giving a blockbuster. Because you may end up, the trouble with all multiples, anything with more than one substance, is you don't know what a person is strengthening to. Okay? They will always strengthen to the lowest denominator. Okay? So if you did a multiple with lutein and zeaxanthin and anything else in, they may strengthen to one capsule because that's all they need of lutein. Okay? But they could need 10 capsules of zeaxanthin, right? So if you test at least with the markers and see which one it is they need, and then you can test the multiple and say, well, actually, we know now that you're strengthening to one particular compound within the multiple. So I found with some macular degeneration, if it's zeaxanthin they may need 6 or 8 capsules of this, okay, because you simply don't get enough of the zeaxanthin from just taking one capsule. But that's always bear that in mind with any multiple compound. They will strengthen to the lowest denominator. So that's why you may get a false reading as to how much an accurate dose is. So doing what Jill showed on both sides of the meridian is one way, and moving the head is another way. Just try and jigger the person out in the neurological system, and you may find then that they need a bit more. But remember, macular degeneration is the biggest cause of blindness. It's more prevalent in the Western world than the Eastern world, possibly again because of diet. This will work for other conditions as well as macular degeneration. But remember, don't forget the screen. Don't forget the DHA or omega-3 oils to improve the quality of the retina or the screen there as well. So here we see diet carotenoids, the colored in vegetables, going in from the diet, and oils from fish and so on, going to retinol palmitate. This is the form of A that you get from your food, and this is then converted in the small intestine with the help of bile into making retinol. Retinol is the biologically active or precursor. I think of this as more the storage form, rather like we're going to talk about with D. This is then dehydrogenated, which means the removal of hydrogen, to all-trans retinal. And this is the substance we use for the visual pigment in the back of the eye. So all-trans retinal can also be made from carotenoids. So the advantage of the carotenoids is if you can convert this in the liver to retinal, or from the diet from fishy and liver, etc., this is the one that works in the eye. Then all-trans retinal is then converted again by dehydrogenation to all-trans retinoic acid, and this is the active form in every other tissue apart from the eye. So this switches genes on, etc. It's involved with the bone and teeth, which is what Jill talked about, the immune system, gene transcription, skin. It's used a lot in skin, Roaccutane and things for acne, isn't it? So vitamin retinoic acid here is used a lot for acne and other skin conditions. Cellular health of the embryo, reproduction and the production of red blood cells or blood cells. So don't forget also to bring in the DHA, and if for the red and the green people, the omega-3 oil is very good, or if you are not, if you're a blue person, or you find that the thinking oil or the other omega-3 oils are very, very important. So remember, EPA itself in here is anti-inflammatory and prevents platelet aggregation, so it actually thins the blood there. DHA is the highest, richest unsaturated oil in the brain, so this is very important with dementia and things. It forms both phospholipid tails in the retina. It's also rich in adrenals and gonads. And there's that chart that Jill talked about with the essential fatty acids and how they work. Now, 3 new products which we've introduced, thinking more on the musculoskeletal side to help osteopaths and chiropractors, is collagen. So remember, collagen we test with the stretch. So that's stretch any tissue. You can stretch this tissue here, you can stretch the tummy, anything which is stretchable, including bone. We know that collagen is made from protein, glycine and lysine. That's the 3 amino acids. It needs vitamin C to help in the hydroxylation, magnesium and manganese, folic acid, zinc, copper and NADH. So collagen is the most abundant protein in the human body. It gives the shape and support to the tissues. So here we see collagen being made from protein, glycine, lysine, being hydroxylated to hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine, and then forms prochains, which are then secreted out of the Golgi apparatus, that's it, endoplasmic reticulum, and eventually secreted out of the cell. And then the last part is the lysyl oxidase enzyme, which removes the sticky components to the collagen to lay it down in the final pathway. Elastin, this was the one that gave the recoil. So remember, elastin was very important in ligaments. So ligaments are 90% collagen, 10% elastin. So that allows that little bit of extra. If you haven't got the right elastin, you tend to strain the ligament much quicker, okay, because it goes twang, the collagen will strain. Okay, you need that little bit of elasticity when you get to the end of the range of motion. But if you go beyond that, then you strain it. So elastin is made from glycine, and alanine is the amino acid in there. Bilberry and other bioflavonoids are very important, P5P and copper. So elastin is a highly elastic tissue in connective tissues. And remember, the elastic tissue is also the arteries, because the arteries have a tremendous amount of expansion, don't they? You think of that pulse every time, that's 72 times a minute. that pulse of that surge of blood going down, those arteries have got to be elastic. And if your arteries aren't elastic, your blood pressure is going to go up, isn't it? Because you're not withstanding the change of the elasticity in the walls. Which again is an indication that if you show positive to K2 and you're in that particular age group, you know, whenever that is, and you're showing to K2, I'd do something about it, because it would mean that you're beginning to get stiff. And one of the ways of checking that, if anybody wants to be a volunteer, is you lie on your back, and it's how far you can come up to touch your toes from lying down. Anybody want to be a volunteer? Not you, Lynn. You can probably get down to the... But if anybody wants to volunteer, I don't see any volunteers. Oh, yes, you would like to? Oh, okay, let's try you here, David. That's good. Okay. Okay. It is quite a... this is a person, he's very brave, because this is one of the best indicators, apparently, of arterial elasticity. Okay, in other words, what you're doing is stretching your hamstrings, but inside the hamstring are a lot of blood vessels on your back. Okay, that's it. So all you've got to do is come up now with your hands to touch your toes. Well, we'll give him a hand up with his arm. Now he's fantastic. Look at that. That's pretty good. Oh, he's gone into cramp and everything else. But you proved the point. Your arteries are probably all right. Probably. Okay. So the more, mind you, he's not so tall to begin with. Are you a blue, David? Yes. So he hasn't got so far to go. Whereas if we take Brian, you see, he's got a lot further to go to begin with. So elasticity is really important. So this is what Weston Price found, 50, 80 years ago, is that he called it activator X, and then it became known as the anti-stiffness factor, was the K. And what we discovered then is that the deficiency of the K led to the calcification of the elastin. So if you start to think about it, and you're starting to think, oh, yeah, parts of my body are not working as well as they used to. As you're beginning to get calcification possibly going into those tissues. Not just, the big elastic tissues, but other, more specific tissues in your body. Could be in the eye and so on. And if you're starting to get calcium into the cells there, like cell death occurs, and it may be that you need to look at the D and the K as possibilities of preventing, getting worse as you get older. What we've found, did you talk about the sources of the K and the D? The major source that Weston Price found with the D was cod liver oil, but he always gave the unpasteurized butter with it. So they called it fermented cod liver oil, but they always gave the unpasteurized butter, and he used the unpasteurized butter which was made in the May-June time when the grass was really lush and growing. So over here in May-June we do our grass cutting for silage and things because the grass is at its lushest. And that's when they put the cows, the milking cows, into the field to eat the lush grass. And what happens is that grass goes into their cecum, because they're ruminants, and the bacteria there work on that and produce the most wonderful milk. And then you make the butter from the milk. So what Weston Price found is that if you had the butter from the time the grass was at its best, is when this anti-stiffness factor, as he called it, to get the D to work, so that people became more flexible and their dental caries actually recovered, when they got holes in the teeth. They had to have the butter. But the butter wasn't so good out of that season. So what they've discovered since is that the cow has a particular probiotic in it, in the ruminants, which is present in oil, which actually goes on to make the K, and that's called B. subtilis. Okay? This is one which humans have largely lost because we don't grubble around as much as what we should do in the dirt. But ruminants have this, and it's that works on basically on the chlorophyll, which is a rich source of K1. So chlorophyll, anything green, has K1 in it. So the bacteria are the essential things to convert the K1 into the K2. Okay, and that's what is, because it's rich in the milk. But if you then concentrate the milk into butter, you've got rid of 97% of the milk is water. So you really you've got your protein and your fat, and then you take just the fat part, which is the butter, which contains the fat-soluble vitamins. This is what I've been saying, his point is taking a fat-soluble vitamin with a glass of water. So, you've got to have a something fatty with it to dissolve it in. So oil as butter, you see, is a very rich source of the fat-soluble vitamins like D, K, E, and so on, if they're there to begin with. So buying unpasteurized butter commercially may be a little difficult, because one part of the year the source could be very good, and you get the same butter in the winter and it may not have the same value. Okay, but it's better than not. Certainly those of you who've tried it, since we talked about this before, it is available now in quite a few shops. When you go online, they will deliver you milk, but you have to buy it, on Tuesday for Friday or whenever. But the availability of the butter is seasonal as well with them. Sometimes you go there and they do a yogurt as well, don't they? It's not always available. It depends on the time of the year. What was the Real Food Company, was it called, the one we use? The Real Food Company up in Cheshire. They do it all the year round. They import it in from France, which is basically, they talk about it being unpasteurized from natural, chemicalized soil. So in other words, they don't spray with herbicides. But they're probably rather like us. They're not allowed to call it organic at this stage because they haven't got certified as organic. But they say no chemicals used. And apparently some Waitrose shops will do it. The bigger Waitroses are doing it now. But again, I don't know where it's from. When I muscle test the one we get from the Real Food Company, it's a good, somebody mentioned about 2 tablespoons. Yeah, I find it's at least 2 tablespoons, the size of it. So some people might be a bit worried about all that amount of butter, all that amount of fat every day. And would be much happier because you're talking about only a few micrograms, but you're having to have a large amount to get a small amount of the K in there. But the interesting thing is once you start using the butter, you wouldn't go back to other butter, because you think, oh, now I know what this tastes like. So when my children come out, they said, haven't you got any proper butter, Dad? So I said, this is proper butter. And they said, no, it doesn't taste right. So they're all conditioned, aren't we? We're all conditioned. So the combination of the right butter on a regular basis will help you to get some of your fat-soluble vitamins in on a regular basis, like people used to. But as soon as it's heated, it loses most of it. It just doesn't seem to muscle test anymore. You can have organic, pasteurized butter, and it doesn't muscle test. I've never had it to muscle test for somebody who needs D, or K. So back to, and that was collagen. Now we've got collagen, elastin, and the third part of looking at joints is the GAG forming, the glycosaminoglycans, or what goes on to form cartilage. So glycosaminoglycans are large linear polysaccharides constructed in repeating units, which contain the amino acids, the amine sugars of glucuronic acid, galactose, and inositol-galactosamine. So this is formed from GAG, or cartilage. It's actually made from sugar. The body makes it from glucose. So glucose is the fundamental. It needs glutamine, B3, niacinamide, magnesium, vitamin C, manganese, horsetail for the silica for the cartilage to form on, and the oat straw, of course, because that's both the sources of silica. And we add glucosamine and chondroitin because those are the ready-made sort of substances if people just genetically can't make it. So you can see if you get a few bits of calcium salts, these are like grains of salt which get deposited in the joint. So you've got a nice smooth knee here with smooth articular hyaline cartilage and synovial fluid being secreted there, and that will last you hundreds of years. But you put a few grains of salt in there and see how long it lasts. Okay, it'll grate it to bits. So in other words, calcified deposits will ruin a joint quite quickly. Okay, so where do those calcified deposits come from? A lack of D and K. Same old system, a change of diet. 20th century, we've interfered with natural substances like butter, milk, and sunshine and so on. All the things which are natural to people years ago. You'll tear a joint to bits. And once you've torn a joint to bits, it's really hard to get it to, settle down and get back in. Gag formula does, it helps, but you've got to get to the cause. It's no good putting a person on gag formula and then find they're still depositing calcium deposits or grains of salt or sand in the joints. Other things to consider with joints is glucosamine sulfate on its own, MSM for the sulfur parts, and omega-3, of course. I get probably more success with omega-3 with joint problems than anything else. People forget that, particularly in the hands and the feet, the extremities. Middle age, particularly women, 50s and 60s, they start developing pains in the hands and the wrists. Almost always that's omega-3. And it's worse, come about May time when the sun starts coming up and the vitamin D level comes up and they get out into the sunshine and they oxidize the oils on the skin and then they have to replace it from substances inside, some of the omega-3s from other tissues. And omega-3 is very anti-inflammatory. It goes on to make prostaglandins 1 and 3, which is anti-inflammatory, and it's prostaglandins that causes those aches and pains in the joints. I also put there a couple of other products we do. Is bromelain, which is anti-inflammatory. Silica, we talked about. Turmeric, well, turmeric flies off our shelves since we've been teaching it with brain function. Turmeric is wonderful, again, anti-inflammatory. People live on it almost. They say, well, can I continue with the turmeric? Yes. You don't need it, but you can continue because they say I feel so much better with it. It's a great antioxidant, great anti-inflammatory detoxifier. And, when it's mixed with black cumin seed, the smart one, it gets absorbed much better, much lower amounts than just raw turmeric on its own. And it has been shown to stimulate brain neuronal development. So it's good for the brain. Ginger and vitamin D, of course. Okay, so that's the chart of making cartilage. Selenium I briefly mentioned before, which is involved. The two major enzymes that selenium works in is thyroid to deiodinize T4 to T3, and glutathione peroxidase, which is the main antioxidant within the cells. So intracellular antioxidant is mainly glutathione peroxidase. So this is the one that reduces hydrogen peroxide. So selenium phosphate is the only way the body makes and utilizes selenium. Okay, remember it cannot use selenium methionine, selenium cysteine, selenium cysteine. It has to make it inside the cell itself. And it makes it from selenate, so sodium selenate is a good source. It gets the phosphate from ATP, and it has to be in water, so it needs the water. So it needs those three ingredients. So by putting these two into a capsule, you must open the capsule up and dissolve it in the water before ingesting. Okay, that activates it so that it works. All right. So if you use and test a person with selenium phosphate, you will find selenium shows up an awful lot. People who have been perhaps secretly deficient in selenium for many, many years. Areas of the world which have naturally high selenates in the soil is where people live the longest. Okay, so there's a clue. Okay, and you all know where that is in Britain. East Anglia, yes. Okay, so don't all go and move to East Anglia, because the more they farm the soil there, the lower it drops down. So they need a couple of 100 years then under the sea, and then come back up again, and we'll reselenate. In America, it's Montana and the Dakotas area there. Okay, so it's in the sort of rural area of North America. And this is the story of the camel wheat. So camel wheat we came across primarily because it is the richest source of selenium, a natural selenium. And so I was interested in this because I was prescribing, selenium for thyroid issues and glutathione peroxidase. And people were saying, well, what sort of foods contain selenium, you see? So we started researching about, and some Brazil nuts do, some don't. Watercress does it have the right type, etc., etc. But the amazing thing is that camel wheat is the best source of it. And it's well known that it's a rich source of selenium. And the story was originally that it was found in the pyramids and taken out, and somebody tried to grow it and found that it was a very old-fashioned type of wheat, And when they analysed it, it was very rich in selenium. This has now been debunked as a story. Okay? What is more likely is that there was an airman from the American air base, which was after the war located in Cairo, and he bought the wheat in a market stall. He was from farming stock, and he thought, what's this? So he sent it back to his father in Montana, who then grew it and found that it was a very old form of wheat. Okay, and that wheat they called Kamut wheat, and it was found to be very high in selenium. The original wheat which was found in the pyramids was called einkorn, or single corn, einkorn. This is the oldest form, of almost like a primitive grass seed, which was used originally in Babylonia and the Mesopotamia area when people started cultivating grains and eating grains. So later on, and I'll show you the description of it, how the genetic constitution, number of chromosomes changed as wheat developed through the years until it doubled the number of chromosomes each time. And now, as we'll see, I think it's got 46 or something in there, which encode for a lot more proteins than what the older wheats were. So this one encodes for much less proteins. It has less gluten, so it's more tolerable to people who have gluten sensitivity. In fact, we haven't found anybody who can't tolerate Kamut wheat. But we prescribe it to people who've got selenium deficiency as a food, natural source for the food. So Montana and Dakotas are rich in selenium. So this is where all the Kamut wheat comes from. Now the biggest export out of America is Italy. Italy buy more Kamut wheat than anywhere else in the world apart from America. And they make pasta, and it's really, really nice. I was quite surprised. I bought some a little while back from Amazon. Organic Kamut wheat pasta. And in Italy, certainly in Sicily, when we went to Sicily, it was available. Kamut pizzas are available. And you use to make cakes as well, don't you?
Or like a loaf type cake. Good for that.
So you can use the Kamut wheat for all sorts of things, really, can't you? Didn't you make an apple crumble once? And
I did. I did mix that in the end, because it's a bit heavy. It's probably best to make something that your children haven't had before, because they can compare it then. It's not the same as it was before. So to make a different cake, like a loaf cake, was better. Or the breakfast muffins went down well.
Breakfast muffins, that was it. Yes,
yeah.
That was the other thing. Very nice, yeah. But at least you know then when you're eating that, you're actually eating something that is good. It's whole grain. It's not got the gluten in the other one, which makes it a little bit more crumbly. As you notice when you have the bread, it's a little bit more crumbly than ordinary bread because it hasn't got so much gluten. But so far, we haven't found anybody who weakens to it, who regardless of their gluten sensitivity, supposedly. So we'll try it out anyway. So that's nature's natural source of selenium. Grain to mill? No, never buy flour because it's all rancid. Oh, Dove's Farm. Yes. You can buy them from Whole Foods. You can buy smaller quantities from Whole Foods. From Dove's Farm, you have to buy 25 kilos, which is a big sack, which, it lasts a long time, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, yeah.
And you probably brew, what do you do, 4 loaves a week?
Yeah, two at a time, yeah.
Yeah. You'll find when you make your own bread, it only lasts about 4 days. And usually before it's actually gone hard, it remains soft, but it goes moldy. Whereas commercially produced bread may go hard, but some of it never goes moldy. And you think, what's in here that if it doesn't make the bread go moldy, what happens to you when you eat that? It must be all those preservatives are going in, aren't they? So about 3-4 days is max. To mill it, the easiest way and cheapest way is a magic bullet. Just buy a magic bullet. You get 2 cylinders in there, a wet one and a dry one. Nobody ever uses the dry one, but the dry one will mill the grain 15 seconds and you've got half a kilo, which is probably about much as you need, isn't it?
No, I use a kilo of flour.
You use a kilo, okay.
Yeah.
So you can go into making, you got the full-size mill, didn't you?
Yeah, just got to make sure
Yes, that's right. So you can get the full-size mill, or you can get a Vitamix. There's loads of ways of doing it now. But it's gaining popularity. You know, more people are beginning to make their own bread, and it's not, you know, it doesn't take an enormous amount of time. You know, how long does it take you, Jill, to make a loaf of bread? How long?
Well, elapsed time is about 2 hours, but the actual time you spend doing it is probably 15, 20 minutes.
So while it's raising or proving, you could be making the butter.
Yeah.
So, right, so selenium, good source of it. So selenium works primarily, I'm not going to go into detail here because you're all familiar with the conversion of iodine, of thyroid, T4 goes down to T3 and needs the selenium to do that and the glutathione peroxidase. So here we see the manufacturing from serine, phosphoserine, with the selenium phosphate being added to selenium. So biosynthesis requires ATP for the phosphate donor. So this contains 100 micrograms of selenium. So remember, you've got to open it up in the capsule and put it into water to get it to work. There's actually 25 selenium-dependent enzymes that have been located down in the body. So these are the two main ones, the thyroid and the glutathione. But there are actually 25, which I was surprised. So there's more and more research. And what I was reading about was that they discovered some years ago, Joe Wallach, who's who pioneered the work with Dead Doctors Don't Lie. Do you remember that? He's got a very good book out now called Epigenetics. Simply ingenious. Worthwhile getting it off Amazon. And he found that selenium deficient back in the 1990s created symptoms exactly the same as cystic fibrosis, and made the epigenetic concept that cystic fibrosis was a genetic defect in selenium metabolism. And he actually won some phenomenal prize for this. Not a Nobel, but pretty good in medicine for discovering this. And nobody's ever known about it. It was sort of put away. And, you know, just remember, it's worthwhile reading the book because it tells a fascinating history of medicine and things. But there's so many good, you know, bits of information that have been discovered and have never been out there for the public to even think about. Wallach, Joe Wallach. It's called Epigenetics. Just look up Epigenetics on the website or on the internet, and hopefully you'll see Epigenetics Limited come up. But that's not, you know, it's in my. I go to Amazon. There is I found it once on the American Amazon, Amazon.com, and there is one which has got the CDs in it. But it's not available in this country. So, you know, I do a lot of driving, so I like to stick it in as a CD, as an audio book. But it's about that thick. I'd have to think how many CDs must be in there. Anyway, so those are the two major thyroid hormones. So I'm not going to go through them. There we can see thyroid T4 with deiodinase 1 and 2, 1 and 3 there to making T3. Right, now here's the D. So at the moment, we have the cholecalciferol, our cholecalciferol, added to the black cumin seed, which makes up the 30 ml bottles. We found again that black cumin seed is the only one that seems to be compatible with it. You remember yesterday when we did it, I think it was with Anne, we added olive oil and other oils. We tried sesame seed, pumpkin seed and so on, and it didn't hold. It just went weak again. So in other words, those oils don't have whatever it is in the oil in the black cumin seed, which enables the D to work. As you know, the black cumin seed was, according to the Prophet Muhammad, the cure for everything except death. And that's because the black cumin seed is grown mainly in the area of the Middle East, or was. Heaven knows what's happening to it now. But also in the area of the Middle East, particularly southern Turkey and Syria, is the world's major source of boron. So what we discovered is that black cumin seed is a natural source of boron, and that boron is very important in the activation of the enzymes to create the vitamin D to get it to work, to the 1,24,25.